Life as an Immortal by Brass and Blood. Okay, it looks like it's maybe like, I assume that means you're a military blood, like you're going to war and all of that. Well, let's see how life would be like as an immortal.
Picture this. You're on a battlefield in the ancient world. You've been fighting all day. Your arm feels like it's held on with duct tape and prayers, and you're down to your last 2 arrows. But the army across from you? Still at full strength. You swear you killed that guy 3 times already. There he is! Again! Waving. It's like fighting a hydra, except every head is a fully trained Persian warrior with incredible health insurance. This was the psychological nightmare of facing the 10,000 immortals, the elite heart of the Persian Empire, and history's first rage quit inducer.
I can't lie, in this situation, just wrap it up. I'm just gonna be like, you know what? I'm gonna just pack my bags and go home. I'm not built for all that. See the big guys with like spears and everything. I'm tired, long day. I'ma just go home. There's either 2 options. You rush in and die, or you go home and maybe survive. Maybe they execute you for desertion. I don't know, but that might be better than that. Yeah, I'd rage.
They weren't just soldiers. They were a walking war crime against enemy morale. For over 200 years, their name was whispered in fear from Greece to India. So, how does a unit get a reputation for being literally unkillable? Was it magic? Performance-enhancing figs? Some kind of ancient respawn glitch? Spoiler alert, it was even more terrifying than that. Let's rewind to the 6th century BCE. A leader named Cyrus the Great is playing a real-life game of Risk, and he's winning so hard it's honestly disrespectful. He's busy building the Achaemenid Empire into a superpower that would eventually sprawl across 3 continents. But as his territory grows, Cyrus hits a classic empire problem. How do you control a massive, constantly rebellious empire without it all falling apart? He needed more than just a big army. He needed a core of absolutely loyal, terrifyingly effective troops who wouldn't betray him, couldn't be bribed, and were willing to die for him. Preferably repeatedly.
Bro might be that
This
guy.
is where the immortals enter the story. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, who was basically the ancient world's most dramatic sports commentator, this hand-picked unit of heavy infantry was an absolute game-changer. Some legends whisper that a brilliant female commander named Pantea Arteshbad actually organized the Guard, which, if true, means the most feared military unit in history might have been created by a woman.
See, and then, you know, all the bloods, they're not going to want to admit that. Oh, there's no way a woman? Oh, come on, there's no way women did that. But yes, it might have been a woman. And now you're going to have to put your sexism to the side and lock in with this one.
The historical record is frustratingly vague on this. Probably because ancient dudes had a real problem giving women credit for anything.
True, true.
The immortals were recruited almost exclusively from the noble families of Persia and Media. This wasn't a job you applied for on ancient LinkedIn. This was a calling. They weren't fighting for a paycheck. They were fighting for family honor, for the kind of bragging rights that echoed through generations, and for their king. They were his personal bodyguards, his frontline shock troops, and his I win button for any military situation that got too spicy. Getting into the 10,000 was the highest honor a Persian soldier could achieve, but the path to get there was a special kind of hell that started in childhood. And I mean early childhood.
How early, bro?
Like, you just learned to walk, now learn to kill childhood.
Imagine you
Pulled
like
from
2 years old and you're like 2 years old already, like 4th in from Vinland Saga, like, ooh, let the kid be a kid for at least a little bit. He already has a life of hell and war and misery ahead of him. At least let him enjoy a little bit. Wow, these people are just on a smoke, bro.
From the top 10% of the warrior class, potential recruits were identified young, from the age of 5. 5! While other kids were learning shapes and colors, the sons of nobles were thrown into a brutal training regimen designed to forge them into perfect weapons. It was basically the world's worst summer camp, except it lasted 15 years and nobody went home. They learned to ride a horse like they were born in the saddle, to fire a bow with the kind of accuracy that would make a modern sniper jealous, and to survive in the absolute worst conditions on barely any food. We're talking scorching deserts, frozen mountains, and endless forced marches that made marathons look like a pleasant stroll to Starbucks. But it wasn't all physical torture. They were also relentlessly drilled to always speak the truth, a core Persian value. Which, and I cannot stress this enough, is spectacularly ironic for a unit whose entire reputation was built on the biggest lie in military history. But we'll get to that. By the time a man was ready to join at age 20, he was a master of warfare. But here's where it gets good. He was now part of an elite class that got better pay, better food, better armor, and way more respect than literally anyone else in the empire.
Yeah, boy.
They were even accompanied on campaigns by their own servants and concubines, a detail that really drives home that the Persian military benefits package was absolutely cracked. Full dental, combat pay, travel companions. This was the ancient world's equivalent of a Fortune 500 executive compensation plan.
So after all that hell, the push-ups, the mountains, the scorched stuff, boom, 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 now at least you get a little bit of love. At least, you're not going to go through all that for no reason. For like other empires in history, you go through all of that and you don't even get anything. At least here, you get your own little thing going on, your own package, at least something.
Okay, so let's talk about the name. The Immortals. Sounds cool, right?
Yes.
Very threatening.
Yes.
Great for merchandising.
Yes.
But what was their actual secret? It wasn't magic. It wasn't divine intervention. It wasn't some ancient energy drink made from fermented camel milk. It was something far more clever and, frankly, more terrifying.
All right, stop.
Brilliant
Stop
battlefield logistics
okay, wait.
combined with weapons-grade psychological warfare. Combined with weapons-grade psychological warfare. The Greek historian Herodotus called them athanatoi, the deathless, for one simple, absolutely diabolical reason. The unit was always kept at an exact strength of 10,000 men. Not 9,999, not 10,001, exactly 10,000. The Persians were apparently very good at math and very committed to the bit. Here's how it worked. The second a soldier was killed, fell ill, or was too wounded to fight, a replacement from a special reserve unit was immediately brought forward to take his place. We're talking same-day replacement. Amazon Prime-level logistics.
Crazy.
The dead and wounded were whisked away so efficiently it was like a magic trick. To an enemy army watching from across the field, the effect was absolutely nightmarish. No matter how many immortals they killed, the unit never shrank. You'd fight all day, count your kills, feel pretty good about yourself, and then look across the battlefield at sunset and see the exact same number of glittering elite warriors staring back at you. It was like trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. Or playing a video game where the enemy team has infinite respawns and you're permanently stuck on one life.
They're playing the mental game. See, once they give up mentally, then you give up physically, and then you lose. So that's either they're playing chess, and then everyone else is playing checkers, or maybe even tic-tac-toe.
Continues. It would drive you absolutely insane. The name Immortal wasn't just a title. It was a marketing campaign. It was propaganda. It was their most effective weapon, and it never ran out of arrows. Basically, the Persians invented the world's first military-grade gaslighting operation, and it was devastatingly effective. These men were masters of both ranged and close-quarters combat. Their strategy was flexible, mobile, and engineered for pure shock and awe. An attack usually opened with a volley of arrows so thick it literally blotted out the sun. Each immortal carried a powerful composite bow, turning enemy formations into human pincushions before anyone got close. They carried large wicker shields covered in leather, lighter than Greek bronze shields, which meant they could be propped up to create a portable fortress wall for firing arrows from cover. Beneath their ornate tunics, they wore scale armor that looked like fish scales, giving them a solid mix of protection and mobility. Once the arrow storm was over, they'd charge with short spears, then pull out short swords for brutal close combat. This combination made them incredibly adaptable, and they looked absolutely fabulous doing it with their glittering gold jewelry. The Immortals were the tip of the spear in Persia's greatest conquests. They were there when Cyrus the Great took Babylon in 539 BCE. They fought under King Cambyses II to conquer Egypt in 525 BCE, where a wild legend claims they painted sacred Egyptian animals, like cats, on their shields to make the Egyptians hesitate. Historians are deeply skeptical, but if true, it's the most galaxy-brain psychological warfare tactic in history. But their most legendary moment came at Thermopylae in 400.
These guys were on a generational run. Generational run. Babylon, Egypt, all the bloods.
180 BCE. King Xerxes had spent days throwing waves of regular troops against 300 Spartans and their allies, getting absolutely nowhere. Frustrated and probably throwing a royal tantrum, he finally sent in the Immortals, the nuclear option. The fighting was horrific. Even the Immortals struggled against the heavily armored Spartans in the narrow pass. The real turning point only came when a local Greek trader showed the Persians a hidden mountain path, letting them surround the Greeks. The Immortals were part of that final, crushing assault that sealed the Spartans' heroic fate. For nearly 2 centuries, the Immortals were the living symbol of Persian power. But empires don't last forever. By the 4th century BCE, the Achaemenid Empire was rotting from corruption and infighting. The brutal training that made the Immortals formidable began to slip. The unit slowly became more of a ceremonial bodyguard, probably spending more time polishing helmets than fighting. Their final exam came against Alexander the Great. When Alexander invaded Persia in 334 BCE, he had obsessively studied their tactics like he was cramming for the world's deadliest pop quiz. At the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BCE, the Immortals stood around King Darius III, ready for their finest hour. It never came. They were no match for Alexander's revolutionary tactics and unstoppable cavalry. The Persian lines shattered. The king fled. The empire collapsed. The Immortals, who had once conquered the known world, were finally, definitively, broken. With the death of their empire, the original Immortals vanished, their story fading into legend. The Persian Immortals were so much more than the one-dimensional movie villains you've seen in 300. They were the special forces of their day, an elite, professional, and brutally disciplined force that acted as the spine of one of history's greatest empires. Their incredible name didn't come from magic or divine favor. It came from slick, psychological warfare, combined with logistics that would make a modern supply chain manager weep. They made themselves appear unkillable through nothing more than excellent planning and maintaining their roster at exactly 10,000 men. They were masters of the bow, spear, and sword. They helped build an empire that stretched from Europe to India, and even though they were eventually defeated, their legacy never died. Later empires, like the Sasanians and Byzantines, would create their own elite units and name them Immortals, desperately hoping to borrow just a fraction of their terrifying street cred. The story of the 10,000 is a powerful reminder that in war, perception can be just as deadly as a blade. Fear is a weapon. Reputation is armor. And sometimes, the best way to win a fight is to make your enemy think you've already won before the battle even starts. They were a force built on discipline, loyalty, and a legend. A legend so powerful that 2,500 years later, we're still talking about them. Which means, in a weird way, They really did achieve immortality. Just not the way their enemies thought. And speaking of weapons that terrified ancient...
Wow, powerful stuff right there. See, wise words at the end from bro. Marketing is everything at the end of the day. Well, it's truly amazing right there. I don't know if you noticed this. Why does every king and guy have to put the great at the end of their name? Mate, just because you put the great there does not mean you're great. You know what they say, the king does not need to... He who calls himself king is no king. So you keep putting the great there, I'm not going to think all that great, mate. You need to actually show me with your actions. But I guess Alexander the Great did cook at the end. But anyway, W reaction as always. Like, subscribe, and all that good stuff.